The third failure was a catering business. Before that, a landscaping app nobody downloaded. Before that, a furniture resale operation that lasted 8 months and ended with Marcus owing his cousin $400 he paid back in installments. By the time he was 31, his family had developed a particular silence around him. Not cruel, not loud. Just the specific quiet that forms when people have collectively decided something and agreed, without meeting, never to say it directly. Thanksgiving was the place Marcus felt it most clearly. Claire would talk about her department's quarterly numbers. Her husband Derek would nod at things he already agreed with. His mother would refill glasses that didn't need refilling. And at some point, someone would ask Marcus how things were going, and the question would land differently than it did for anyone else. Softer, shorter, already half expecting the answer not to matter much. "Still working on some things," he'd say. "That's good," someone would say back. And then the table would move on. He stopped explaining after the catering business. Not out of shame exactly, but out of a recognition that explanation had become its own kind of performance, and he was tired of the audience. The third attempt had taught him something the other two hadn't, that he'd been building for the wrong kind of witness, telling people at the beginning, measuring the work by their early reactions, letting their doubt enter the room before he'd finished furnishing it. The fourth thing he didn't tell anyone about, he started it 6 months after the catering business closed. A consulting practice, small and specific operational strategy for independent healthcare clinics trying to survive consolidation. He had no formal background in healthcare. He had 3 years of reading, 2 unpaid advisory relationships with clinic owners who couldn't afford real consultants, and a method he'd developed quietly, tested slowly, and revised without fanfare. He worked from his apartment. He did not post about it. He did not mention it at Thanksgiving. When his mother asked, generally, how things were, he said fine. When Claire asked if he was still doing the business stuff, he said he was doing some work, yes. He let them assume. There is something clarifying about being underestimated by people who love you. The expectations drop so low that the floor becomes solid. Marcus worked without needing to manage anyone's impression of what he was doing, because no one was watching. He met with clinic administrators in waiting rooms and church basements. He built a small portfolio of outcomes, clinics that had stabilized, one that had expanded. He wrote the method down. He revised it again. In the second year, a healthcare industry journal contacted him about an article. He spent 4 months working with their editor. He did not tell his family. The article published on a Tuesday in March, his name in the byline. His photograph, the one he'd submitted himself, taken in his apartment with decent lighting and a plain background. His method described in detail, credited to him, situated inside a national conversation about independent healthcare survival. He was at his desk when the notifications began. The first call came from a clinic owner in Ohio he'd worked with the year before. She had seen it shared in a professional group. She called to say congratulations, and her voice had the warmth of someone who had not been surprised. The second call came from a former colleague, someone peripheral, not close, who had clearly seen it on social media and wanted to register that he had always believed in Marcus, a statement Marcus received without comment. Then a gap of 40 minutes, then Claire. Her voice was different than he expected, not cold, not performative, actually quieter, which he hadn't anticipated. She said she'd seen the article. She said it was impressive. She asked why he hadn't said anything, and he told her honestly that he'd needed to do it without the weight of everyone knowing. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said she understood, in a way that suggested she was still deciding whether she did. Derek did not call. His mother called that evening. She had read the article twice, she said. She mentioned the photograph. She said he looked well. She did not apologize for anything, and he did not expect her to, and there was something in that exchange that felt more honest than an apology would have. He sat with his phone on the desk after they hung up and thought about the order, who had called when, what each gap meant. The colleague who needed to be seen supporting him once it was safe. Claire, who called when she was ready and not before. His mother, who waited until she had read it completely. There was no confrontation. He had not wanted one. What he had wanted, without ever naming it clearly until now, was simply to know what he already suspected, that the silence had been theirs, not his, that the story had been moving the whole time, that it had never needed their belief to be true. He turned the phone over and went back to work,